How is it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Many Interpretations of, where this time we are taking a look at our second ever abellisaurid. This fella is known as Majungasaurus, an abellisaurid that was native to Madagascar during the late Cretaceous period. There's really not a lot of media depictions of this guy, but the ones that we do have are certainly interesting, to say the least, but you know, it'll be fun nonetheless. And by the way, I'm back to using my DSLR to record these videos since I got all of my other YouTube stuff kind of officially set up. That blue isn't too harsh, is it? I hope it's not. So hopefully the mic and the overall image quality isn't too bad. But anyway, let's just get into it. We'll start off with the infamous Jurassic Fight Club. Now, this has a lot of things wrong with it. And the first thing that's wrong with it is the naming. They call it Majungasaurus.
A male Majungasaurus is on the prowl.
Now, there is a little bit of a line of logic that went into this. See, of course, when Majungasaurus was first discovered, it was named just that. It was named Majungasaurus. But later in Madagascar, there was a supposed pachycephalosaur that was discovered, and they named that Majungasaurus. It wasn't until later analysis of this pachycephalosaur that they found that this was just Majungasaurus. So that means the name of Majungasaurus is simply just a junior synonym of Majungasaurus. But Majungasaurus is the official name of this dinosaur. So calling it Majungasaurus was simply wrong in the documentary. It is still, like, the name Majungasaurus is still synonymous with the animal, but it's not the official name, if you know. But aside from that, we'll get into the design. And man, there are just a lot of things with this. So it has a very typical theropod dinosaur design, and that is a problem, because abellisaurids are quite famous for not having a typical theropod dinosaur look about them. Majungasaurus in particular is often described as kind of like a sausage, and that is a very apt description of it because it did look very similar to that. On top of that, Majungasaurus also had relatively short legs in comparison to its body size, something that's not present here. And the arms. This is something we're going to see a lot, but they seem like regular theropod dinosaur arms. Abellisaurids had very, very short arms. They had what were basically just wrists that were held backwards on the animal's body. They were almost vestigial, though, as you saw in Prehistoric Planet, there's a possibility that they can use them for a type of display. That does have some scientific backing to it. But as they're shown here, they're shown with elbows and just way too long. Like, they certainly shouldn't be portrayed like this. There are some merits to the design. I do like the colors. And I think it is interesting that they showed off some sexual dimorphism. Like the male here has some wattles and kind of some extra head ornamentation, which I think is very interesting, along with, of course, that horn, because Majungasaurus did have a type of horn on the middle of its forehead. But we'll go ahead and move on from that, and we'll go on to Dinosaur King, which it looks better. The size is certainly better. I think the legs are still a bit too long. But the skull looks pretty good. The colors are certainly striking. The arms are another problem, and once again, this will continue to be a problem. But the rest of the skeletal structure seems to match up kind of well. Like, it's not as bad as Jurassic Fight Club's, if I were to be honest. Then there's prehistoric assassins, and it kind of feels like we're seeing a little bit of an evolution with this design. I mean, this one looks a lot closer, too. The legs seem to be a lot more proportionally sound. I would just say that the animal is a little bit thin, but the horn is present. That nasal structure that Majungasaurus had is like really bumpy on its skull. That is present, and I think that looks pretty good. The skull looks good. The arms are wrong. This is better. Again, we're seeing a little bit more of a progression here. Then in Dinosaur Revolution, again, it looks better. We have one that the skeletally it looks to match up a bit more. I think the legs are a bit closer. Once again, the horn's present, that nasal structure is present. It also does have a little bit thicker skin. One thing to note about abellisaurids is that we found on like Carnotaurus specifically that they had huge random scales. Those were once thought to be osteoderms, but they weren't. They were just large scales. It's likely that other abellisaurids would have the same thing. So you would see them with kind of like rough skin, like just pebbly skin, essentially, just randomly throughout the body. So this seems closer to that, which is pretty cool. And the arms do seem to be a bit of an improvement. I think that they are still a bit too long, but we're getting somewhere, you know? We're getting somewhere. Then in Planet Dinosaur, the arms do look better, but they still have like kind of an elbow going on, and they're held forward instead of being held backwards. The rest of it seems pretty decent, though. The skull looks good. The rest of the body is really thick and kind of sausage-shaped. That horn, I really like how prominent that horn is, as well as just the rest of the bumpy texture on its skull. I'll also bring up that it is portrayed as a cannibalistic dinosaur, and that is true. We had, like, Majungasaurus is one of the few dinosaurs that we actually have evidence of cannibalistic tendencies. These are bite marks on Majungasaurus bones that were left by other Majungasauruses. I will say that it is likely that most, if not all, theropod dinosaurs would partake in cannibalism. I don't think that Majungasaurus here was the only one, and I certainly don't think that it indulged in cannibalism all the time, but if it saw the opportunity, it would probably take advantage of that. Like maybe if there's limited resources and there's a smaller Majungasaurus over there, then yeah, that is up for grabs for this larger Majungasaurus. But it most certainly wasn't just a cannibal, I think that a lot of people get that narrative when they hear about this. It's one of the only dinosaurs that we actually have proof of cannibalism. Then in Mutant Planet, this one looks interesting. The skull, I don't think matches up as well as some of the other ones we've seen, but it has the rough skin texture on that skull. The horn is definitely not as pronounced. And you can actually see the kind of rough skin texture. Only thing is that it's portrayed as being in like rows, like kind of just perfectly spaced and all that good stuff. As I mentioned before, the scales would have been a lot more random throughout the body. They're actually very similar to ceratopsian scales, pebble scales. But once again, it's still a step in the correct direction. Again, we're just kind of seeing an evolution here. It's very interesting. Chaos Theory is not out yet. But we have a toy of Majungasaurus, so it seems likely that Majungasaurus will appear in Chaos Theory. And considering the fact that the toy is based off of, what would show up in the show, then I'm just going to use the toy as a basis. And all around, it's not bad. The skull looks good. The horn looks decent. The colors I'm not a big fan of. And the body is really stubby and the legs are a little bit too proportionally long. But if this is the way that it looks in the show, I don't think that would really be terrible. I think it looks pretty decent, all things considered. So, I do hope that it shows up in the show. Saying show way too many times, that's what we do around here. But I just think that that'd be really cool to see. Sticking to the Jurassic franchise, we will go on to Jurassic Park 3, Park Builder. This one looks mangled. He looks like he's in a lot of pain. The arms are back to, we're back to the older tropes. And that neck, I don't know what's going on there, man. It's like a mixture between a snake and a theropod. That's just so different. It's also called Majungatholus on here. Again, that's just a junior synonym of Majungasaurus. Then in Jurassic World the game, this one I've never really been a fan of. Those hands are, it's got 2 fingers, first of all. Abelisaurids, they would have had 4 fingers that were very, very stubby. The legs seem to be too big. The rest of the body seems too other theropod instead of Abelisaurid. The skull looks decent, but with the rest of the body, it doesn't match up. I know that a lot of this is because it's rigged onto other theropod dinosaur animations in the game, so it kind of loses its identity, essentially. I've never been a fan of this one. It's just, but once you get to level 31 and 40, it just adds some more spikes, and the colors are certainly a lot more deep. Like you get a deeper blue and all that. Yeah, it's not for me. And then in Jurassic World Alive, some things are improved. I like the skull a lot more, and I think the colors are really cool, but it's just the arms again. But I will point out that horn. I think it's really cool how they made it larger than most other depictions. That A, makes it stand out a little bit more, and B, also kind of hints at the fact that that horn was probably layered in keratin too, so it probably could have gone to different sizes. Either way, I do think this is an improvement on the previous one that we just saw. Next up is the Jurassic World Evolution Majungasaurus, and in order to talk about that, I'm going to go into the game, because that's something I could do now.
And here is the little heartbreaker himself. This is the Jurassic World Evolution Majungasaurus, and pretty decent all things considered. It has relatively short legs, so it's pretty low to the ground. Its arms are unfortunately incorrect and being held inside like a regular theropod, which you are not in that aspect, are you? The head looks really good though. Like I'm a big fan of its overall shape. I think they did a nice job at that. Having troubles keeping up with him. like the nasal structure at the front, that rough skin. It also, I mean, it has what are mostly spikes and osteoderms rather than the type of thick scales, which of course was not present. But I do think that this is one of the better designs. I also like the way that the horn looks on this animal. Yeah, no, I'm not, you know, I'm not a hater of this one. I like this one. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, look at him just sleep there. Very adorable. Am I right? So yeah, that one's pretty decent. I like it.
And to wrap it all up, we will look at the best one, the most up to date, probably because it's the most recent, and honestly just checks all the boxes, essentially.
The design from Prehistoric Planet 2.
It is portrayed as being like a sausage. It's got the very short legs in comparison to its body, the rough, pebbly skin, that rough nasal structure, or nasal skin on its its nose, that horn that seems to be layered in keratin, and also a little bit of an elongated skull. I haven't mentioned this yet, but abelisaurids are famous for having very stubby skulls, but Majungasaurus had a decently elongated one compared to other abelisaurids. Just really cool. I love this guy. I love the way it looks. It is designed by one of my favorite paleo artists, that being Gabriel Ugueto, and if I butchered that, I am terribly sorry. I'm a fake fan if I did, but I think it's gorgeous. This is seriously my favorite one on the overall list, and it's just, of course, the CGI does look amazing in the show. We already know that, but this one I think captures the animal very well. Plus, it's involved in a sequence with one of my all-time favorite prehistoric creatures, Simosuchus. You can't go wrong with that, you know? It's groovy, you know? It's groovy. And that is all we have. Of course, there were not too many depictions of this animal, but the ones that are present do have some aspects that are correct about Majungasaurus. As you saw, there were not too many things correct with a lot of them. A lot of them fell to the same tropes. I'm sure a lot of that could be attributed to when they were created and just the available information. But for the most part, a lot of those were pretty recent and just kind of just didn't include some things that probably should have been included. All around, though, this was a very fun video to make. This is our second abelisaurid, and you know, it's my first many interpretations of being recorded on my camera that I haven't taken out in years. Again, I hope that microphone is still in good shape, essentially, because I do hope that this video does turn out decent. I'm tired of using my phone, you know, Anyway, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because that helps out tremendously, and I really do appreciate it. But that's all I have for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have an awesome day.